Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time. So you're probably not surprised I'm still on the topic of last week. It's like, I think it was worse than 9/11, as far as the impact. Because when 9/11 happened, it was like shocking, right? We were all shocked, but there was this sense of what the fuck? Maybe a little bit of fear. I remember I was dating an evil woman at the time. Just probably the most evil woman I've ever known. Story for a different time. But she'd gone to work, and I turned on the TV and saw what was transpiring. And I knew she was planning on going over the Golden Gate Bridge. And at the time, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know, if terror attacks would continue or whatever. Somebody said the Golden Gate Bridge, and I called her. I said, don't go, don't go to work. She goes, oh, it's going to be fine. I said, no, look, trust me, everything's canceled, Anyway, but the point was, it was dramatic. It was everybody on your feet. What the fuck is happening? It was horrific. All these people died. But it wasn't like the I don't know. It just, there wasn't a central figure. It wasn't targeted at me. It wasn't targeted at me. And this one was you. And it was local. It was somebody here. And of course, in my case, somebody from Utah, somebody that was Mormon, somebody tick every single box. I don't know. This one just seems to linger more. I don't know. I don't know how long 9/11 lingered. But this one feels different. This one feels like I've got to do something. And maybe, obviously, other people did then, too. They signed up for military, blah, 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 all these other things. But anyway, the point is I'm thinking about it almost all day, every day, whether I put my phone down or not. Like even when I'm feeding the birds and the squirrels and the dog and washing the dishes, I'm thinking about it. And there's a lot of different angles I'm thinking about. And, when I do turn on the phone and I start scrolling, it's not that fun because you see people that are on your side or supposed to be on your side, and they're saying things that aren't true, or they're just, and it's fun seeing people get canceled. It's fun to see Kimmel get canceled. But, as soon as I heard that, I thought, well, they were probably trying to get rid of him anyway. So this is the perfect excuse. Hey, it's not our fault. You said it. Flush. But everybody's just lying, misrepresenting. We saw them laughing. We saw them cheering. And, sometimes when I watch the right soapbox about the left and how evil they are, including myself, because it's just so apparently evil to me. Like, there's just no denying that somebody giggling and laughing at the death of somebody else, you have to really wade through and go, they were brainwashed, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, that kind of thing. And you can do that because there's just no way you arrive at that kind of evil without the brainwashing, right? And so I am still the kind of guy that wants to find a way out for people. I want to find a way for them to still stay human. I know that it's not practical to just get out, to just, you know, break out in war and snatch them all up and put them in hospitals. That's not functional. That's not going to happen, you know? But how do we rehab? How do you rehab people that are so far gone? And I've just been searching for, like, why? Are there elements? Do I have any of those traits? Because I was trying to think, okay, when have I celebrated a death? When have I felt good about a death? And I've just been thinking, and I know that I've been cold about death. Like, I'll scroll my feed and find out somebody that's a jerk died, somebody who I didn't like, and I just think, I kind of think good riddance, and I go, is that a celebration? Is that cold? I don't say good riddance, but I have said things about people when people are being celebrated as a hero. I can't remember the name of an artist, but she was constantly calling me, Trump supporters, conservatives, libertarians, whatever you want to call me, not left, calling us MAGA Nazis, hateful, racist, homophobes. So, like, when somebody's been calling you names and attacking you for a long time, when they die, I don't know, it just seems like an unnatural reaction to go, oh, that's terrible. Especially when nobody's looking. But I mean, with this one particular artist in a couple of these things, I said, well, this artist has been calling me a Nazi and calling essentially for violence. Let's make no bones about it. When somebody calls you a Nazi, they are labeling you as someone worthy of murder. Because there isn't a good person alive with the definitions that we know about Nazis, or the definitions that have been given us. I'm not saying they're all true or whatever, different conversation, but the way they feel about Nazis is that they're the most evil of all evil. And punch a Nazi, kill a Nazi. When they call you a Nazi, they mean that you deserve death. It's a real death threat. In my opinion, it is. It's a conditioning for your murder. This is the way Antifa. So when you get called a Nazi, we're so used to it. It's just like, okay, again, really, I got called a home. Any kind of disagreement you have, it's 10 words until Nazi. So we've become desensitized to it over the last decade, because it started really hardcore in 2016. I mean, I was in a band with a guy who was calling everybody a Nazi way back. I mean, even when I was in the band with him, But we both moved to San Francisco. For some reason, our scenes hardly ever cross paths. I don't know if he's still here, but in the 20 years I was here, I saw him out in the wild 4 times, 5 times maybe. That's it. But one of the times, he was walking around with a George Bush sandwich board, calling him a Nazi. Always Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. Like, they're addicted to that. It's a stand-in for Satan. A certain chosen tribe has redefined Satan as Hitler, a white European guy who didn't like Jews. That's the new Satan. But so, when somebody that calls you that over and over again dies, I mean, are you expected to feel grief? I mean, because I'm just saying, telling the truth here, I don't feel grief. It's kind of hard to make me feel grief anyway for strangers, unless I'm watching a movie or watching a thing and I'm led into it by a story and there's a child involved or something, some imagery. But if it's just a description, R.I.P. this jerk that's been calling me a Nazi for the last decade, I don't really summons. I don't sit there and go, I don't get drawn into their story and get really heartbroken about it. That's just me being honest. And maybe I'm a terrible person. Maybe this is why I hung out with lefties for so long. I don't know. I don't know how normal people feel. But when people, feel like I have a little bit of a gauge for performance. And I feel like a lot of people put on a performance. Like, you know, I feel like a lot of people just aren't really honest, you know? And honesty is really important, being authentic. You know, to me, it is. Like, I go by the principle, I'd rather have somebody not like me on honest pretenses, like for real, because they know me, because I've been honest, than I would have them. I would rather have them not like me for that reason than like me because I was inauthentic and I pretended to be something I wasn't. Do you know what I mean? I prefer the honest version. I feel like it's a public service to allow people to reveal yourself to a point where they can choose to whether or not to like you. You know, it's like, look, all my cards are on the table. Do you still like me? Great, then we can move forward. You know, but I've been detecting. You know, it's one thing to just be repulsed by their reaction, but it's another thing to feign like we're perfect angels. Like I'll hear, you know, people going, "We're not the same," and I'll go, "That's true. That's true." Anyway, I'm just trying to tell you what I've been thinking about this week. I've been really thinking about this and going, "What's the difference? What's the difference?" You know, like when you find out that who's been threatening you, or maybe somebody who's killed a relative, or caused a bunch of problems and committed a bunch of horrific crimes. You know, maybe a guy that murdered, you know, a serial killer. When you know, he goes on death row, public execution, and you're glad that he's dead. And maybe some cheers erupt. You know? I was telling you about that comedian friend, former friend of mine that went to Britain, Will Franken. He's a satirist and just a really all-around disagreeable fella. But he dragged me to the Tookie Williams protest to try to spare his life out at whatever the prison is across the way. You know, he wanted to go, and I thought, okay, I'll go with you. It was a public performance stunt for mostly him to just get in people's faces and whatever, but he wanted to celebrate the death of Tookie Williams, and I went with him, and he did most of the performance stuff, and I was just kind of like, okay, I'm not really into this, you know? And it wasn't because I'm not pro death penalty so much because I just don't like the idea that death should be a profession, you know? I don't like that because that's a slippery slope. As soon as you appoint yourself, say humans have the right to kill somebody not in self-defense, you know, as a profession. Third party, not you. If somebody rapes your sister or your friend, go out, get them. Nobody needs to know. Disappear the dude. Case closed. Don't get caught. There's no moral quandary for me in that. You know it. You have the details. Blah blah blah. But just outsource it to another party. I don't like this third party being an executioner. You know, and I don't like the message that it says that, okay, yes, you can have a license to murder people who didn't do anything to you necessarily. Anyway, so that's complicated. And my feelings on it are not always totally consistent, you know. But so I didn't feel really good about it. And so when Tookie was executed, I didn't have a big celebration because, again, the murders weren't affecting me necessarily, but the symbol of him being murdered for the murders that he committed was at least in the ballpark of justice. Do you know what I mean? Because he murdered people. You know, and so it's acceptable for me, for people who are tied close to the case, especially family and friends, to actually let out sighs of relief, joy, that a dark era is over, or at least they hope it's over. Probably isn't, but at least they hope it is. So you can explain all those kinds of relief, you know? The feeling of relief is a different kind of expression than giggly glee. What we saw, like I've been thinking about all the terrible images. I don't want to watch them again. These people celebrating, because it's just such a dark part of humanity that I don't want to bother myself with it too much, but I'm trying to just go over in my mind the ones that I've seen, and some of them stick out more than others, but mostly it sticks out as glee. It doesn't stick out as relief, because, you might want to come. I've been trying to defend them, because that is my nature. My nature is to defend them. My nature is to have high double standards, to be able to attack people and judge them. But when I hear other people do it, I'm more likely to want to step in the middle and go, hold on there, partner. Slow down. Cast the first stone if you're without sin. Are you without sin? Probably not. But in that, you want to think, well, what is my sin? Well, what is their sin? Are they the same? How do we find some similarities there? And I think, okay, well, let's say, okay, these kids are brainwashed, right? And so if you're told this person's a Nazi, that person's a Nazi all day, every day, from kindergarten for 16 years, all the way K through 12 and into college, like Tyler Robinson undoubtedly was, and Lance, and all these queers for Salt Lake, armed queers for Salt Lake, whatever. So if they had legitimate fear, like, these people are Nazis, they're coming for you, they want to kill you, they want to exterminate you. If you're going around in life and you're thinking that's really what's going to happen, you see a red hat, for example, and you actually nearly pee your pants because you think they're going to kill you, like you're legitimately scared. I'm trying to think, is that what we're dealing with? Can that be? I'm trying to explain this to myself. Can that be part of the explanation? That they legitimately fear? And then I go, okay, if that were the case, I would go, what would I expect the reaction to be? I would expect the reaction to be relief. Like, oh, thank the Lord. There would be this moment of humility, like, that you might see when you see it in courtrooms, right? You see it when convicts are sentenced to death or just sentenced to life or whatever. They receive they're not getting out of jail. And you'll see victims' families, that look, the relief. And then you see the convict and they have this other look of despair, like, shit, it's over for me. That dramatic courtroom moment, that look of relief, like, we won, this stage of my life is over. Maybe I can put this behind me. Right? That's what I would be looking for. If there was a legitimate fear there, a legitimate belief that you and I, the MAGAs and people wear a red hat or support Donald Trump or whatever, think it's not a good idea to mangle the body parts of children and render them sexually dysfunctional, not functional, no joy from love, ruining all their body parts, making them so they can't breed and have families. That we think that's horrible, like, do they believe that we're coming to kill them? Maybe few are, but why didn't I see that reaction? Why wasn't it relief? Why was it taunting, laughing? Because is this what you see in courtrooms? Fuck you, piece of shit. Dick. You suck. celebration. That's not what you see. So there's something else. It's not that. You know? In the text, apparently, of what he wrote, who knows if it's true, if it's not. I try to take Occam's razor with this. Sure, they might be cleaning it up. I don't know why they'd be cleaning it up for Lance. Lance could be cleaning it up himself. I don't know. I don't know. But to me, it's plausible. People are talking about, kids don't talk like that. Yeah, ACT, perfect score. Yes, they do. Not all, but that crowd does. His crowd, ACT, brainiacs, yeah, they do. Not all kids talk like Youngblood or Yeezy or whatever the fuck, Tech Nine, But yeah, the self-assessment I've been trying to take is, have I ever been anything like that? And I'm not coming up with anything, and I don't know if I'm blocking anything out, but that kind of demonic celebration, and also you kind of gotta, again, even the comparisons that I'm coming up with are, the only ones I'm coming up with is like murderers, people who have committed crimes, like legitimately committed crimes. They've murdered people, they've sent fear, they've caused trauma, and then there's this sigh of relief. But in this case, we don't even have a person that's committed any crimes. Like none. Not even close. I doubt the guy ever got a speeding ticket. He's like annoyingly on the level when it comes to that kind of thing. We're talking guy that is goody two shoes in a way that, you just go, well, say what you want about the guy, but he'd make a damn fine neighbor. Doesn't matter what he says. Kind. He argues with the trans people, and he treats them like nice people who need help. The way we should all treat them, honestly. That's okay. So here's a way that I kind of a little bit like leftists. Like when Charlie Kirk was alive and doing that stuff, sometimes I was a little annoyed by how nice he was to him. I wanted him to be meaner. That's on me. I'm not a good person. I don't claim to be a good person. So sometimes when I watch Charlie Kirk, I wanted him to be meaner. I wanted his smackdown to be harder. I wanted it to hurt a little bit more, because I'm not a good person. But Charlie seemed like he was. He could deliver the smackdown and in a nice way, but I've just been trying to find whatever it is that's existing in the brains of these kids, And again, there is no doubt these kids have been poisoned. This is state-sponsored poisoning of these kids. I mean, it's not even close, And we allowed it. We have to accept our role in this. We allowed it. Okay? We weren't vigilant. We kept saying, it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. We didn't check. Or when we did check, we said, we'll fight. We'll make a couple posts, but then we won't really do anything. We'll go to one or two meetings. Maybe, 1% of us will show up at a meeting and, try to put the pressure on, but we gave up. We just gave up too much. We gave in to try to be nice, Maybe like Charlie. Maybe we're all being too nice like Charlie, Like I said, maybe that's his biggest mistake. Maybe his biggest mistake was actually reaching out. Because look what he got for it. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be good because of the energy and stuff, but I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around how people become that evil, and that's the part that I'm not able to find a corollary. Because every example that I come up with of when I've felt relief, it's been because the person was a criminal or obviously doing bad things. Well, not necessarily with that artist. They didn't do anything. They said things, but even then, that's promoting violence. And I don't know how anybody, being fair, looking at Charlie Kirk, what he said and how he behaved in context, I don't know how anybody could see anything that he said as being a threat of violence against anybody. It could be a threat about taking away their drugs, or taking away, or making it harder to find a doctor to stick your genitals in a blender. But these are well-intentioned. I think even a rational person should be able to at least see that he's well-intentioned about that. Actually, no, I don't think you should be able to harm yourself and destroy your own body, or at least get a doctor to do it when you're underage. I don't think that's a good option. I mean, how do you not see the good intentions behind that? I think they're on their, it's on their, especially the way he communicated it. He never communicated it the way I do. I'm the type of guy who go, fuck you, this stupid shit, I'm not a very nice person, But with him, no, how do you twist it? You have to edit it and you have to clip it. And then I go, okay, so somebody else edited it and clipped it, and therefore they really believe it. And okay, now we're on to something. They really believe it. They're poisoned. And they really believe that Charlie Kirk and his group are on their doorstep with pitchforks and wanting to execute them and expel them from society, or just throw them in a mental institution, because Lord knows we talk about that kind of stuff. Or I do, And I mean, I imagine if there was a whole bunch of people talking about throwing me in an institution or excluding me from society, I might be a little bit defensive. So I'm kind of going, okay, maybe I can relate. I'm finding somewhere to relate. But then he dies. He gets murdered, assassinated. Isn't there a moment where you go, oh shit, did I really want that? You know what I mean? Because that's the way you expect people to behave. Is just like, okay, I talked a big game, I said a bunch of shit, but then it actually happened. There's this little bit of, oh shit, wait, what? I didn't mean that. Or you expect a relief, but we didn't get relief. No signs of, oh man, what a relief. No, it was mockery. Like in a courtroom, guy's sentenced to death. Somebody's executed. Ted Bundy. Let's pretend Ted Bundy had 5 kids and a wife. Probably wouldn't have ended up on death row, but let's just say John Doe ends up on death row, serial killer, has 5 kids and a wife, but his crimes are so heinous they decide publicly execute him. Do you imagine a scenario where he gets executed and the family turns to the children and the wife and goes, haha, fuck you. Fuck you. No, you don't see that. That's not something you expect to see. If you saw that in a movie, you wouldn't even think they were victims anymore. You'd hate them. You'd go, no, that's not the way this works. The guy gets executed because he gets, but no, we don't excuse that behavior. So yeah, I guess it's good news and bad news. The good news is, in all my, I don't like to call it soul searching, but it's something searching for answers and trying to figure out why it happened. or how this poisoning happened and how there are so many of them. I haven't been able to find any real direct corollaries where I can go, yeah, I get that. I get it. That's the good news, but it's also the bad news. Because that means, what the fuck do we do with these people? Because you kind of got to be able to find some sort of common ground. You got to be able to find their humanity. But I've been trying to find it, and I'm not finding it. So maybe that's my problem. Are you guys finding it? Because I'm not finding it. I mean, I see it. I'm picturing this overweight girl with green hair just laughing and cackling, and she looks a lot like one of my nieces who's also overweight with green hair, And this niece of mine, she's a nice, friendly person. See her at Christmas, she's a sweetheart, But that's, to me, a guy who probably the last time she saw me, I was wearing nail polish and eyeliner, because I thought, who knows why the fuck I was wearing that shit, I was doing it in solidarity, honestly. That's what's so fucked up. A lot of that shit is being solidarity with the misfits, A lot of the reason why I appeared to be a misfit for so much of my life is it's savior complex. It's Khaleesi, savior of the blacks, Call me Merkley, savior of the misfits. It was a terrible condition. I don't think I'm afflicted with it much, but this conversation probably is indicative that I still am afflicted with it. Still looking for an excuse, still looking for a way to say, no, they're not that bad. They can be saved. But I'm finding far less hope in that they can be saved category. Because I think, would my niece with the green hair and the septum ring, is she celebrating? I don't think so. No. I don't want to find out. I don't want to find out. I'm just hoping she's not. I don't think so. I mean, nothing about her personality has ever indicated that at all. But yeah, I don't know how you bring people back from that. I don't know what you do. I mean, a friend of mine, a couple people on the internet, is love thy enemy. And I'm like, okay, I like that. I like the way that sounds, but what does it look like? A hug? Are you supposed to love the person that wants you dead? That fucking asshole James Lindsay, trying to get on Matt Walsh, because Matt Walsh is just like very logically explained. He said, you got to know when people are cheering for, and this is Matt Walsh, who's made a movie called What is a Woman? Very fair. Lots of dunks, but fair. He wasn't angry or mean to people. He let them say what they said. He showed the sickness, in kind of a humorous way. Maybe humor's bad in that situation. I don't know. But he's got a target on his head for sure. And he's been very upset this last week. And I just go, that makes sense. Makes sense to me. And he was just explaining on Charlie Kirk's show, with Ben Shapiro there, which I thought was kind of gross. But Matt Walsh is just going, look, you got to know who your friends are and who your enemies are. And a person who wants you dead, who celebrates the murder of a good man just for speaking his mind, who celebrates with glee, that's not your friend, that's your enemy. And what did James Lindsay do? He hops on and he goes, That's exactly what Schmidt or whatever, some Nazi said. It's the friends and enemies doctrine. I'm like, are you, wait, hold on, wait, what? If you talk about identifying the difference between friends and enemies, now you're a Nazi? Like, holy fuck, that's crazy. That is crazy. That is crazy to slap that label on such an obvious part of nature. You have to go through nature and go, who's my friend, who's my enemy? Now you're trying to tell me that I can't distinguish between the two? Because if I try to distinguish the difference between a friend and an enemy, I'm a Nazi? What the fuck? I mean, what, from a guy who's been saying I'm anti-communist? What's that? That's not distinguishing who's a friend and enemy? Are communists your enemy or your friend? Anyway, he's a fucking clown. But again, he's another one of these guys. How do you fucking think? And it seems to me that it's the force of good and the force of evil in the world. I'm sorry to keep breaking it down this way, but I've found that any other way to try to break it down is trying to lead you away from the simple, observable, objective fact, the difference between good and evil. Anytime you get into intellectualism, some kind of economic system, anybody that tries to divert the conversation away from the basics, from the simples, they're trying to deceive you. It's gaslighting. Not a fan of the term, overused, but it works. It's gaslighting you. It's saying, no. You don't know the difference between a friend and enemy. They're the same. There's no left and right. There's no up and down. There's no black and white. They're both the same. Two wings of the same bird, shit I've said before. It's not left or right. In other words, it's nothing. Everything you say, everything you think is wrong. People say that all over the place. I see that constantly. Everything you know about this is wrong. Okay, thanks. Anyway, I don't know how you guys are feeling about this, but I still have hope because it would be stupid not to. The world is still, believe it or not, beautiful. That weather is fantastic. The birds are great. I worry more about Porky coming back. He's the first bird. And if he doesn't show up during the day, I get nervous about him. I think it was yesterday the last time I ever could see Porky. But he comes back, and I go, whew. But one day he won't. One day there'll be no Porky. And he was the first pigeon. There's about 30 pigeons that visit my deck daily. And I know them, named 20 of them. They've got bands on them. But Porky was the first. Anyway, that's a tangent. In that world, everything's great. There's no, maybe not for them, because they got hawks to deal with. It's rough out there for a pigeon, I'm telling you. But it's still glorious, flying around. And even through all this rough shit we have, aren't we lucky to be able to live through it, you know? Be nice if it was just better times, but you do have to have gratitude for even having the chance to try to tackle some of these problems. You know? We definitely got to figure out a way to fix it. Certainly not letting dangerous, threatening people run around and have their way. Criminals. We just can't let criminals get away with it. We got to undo the thing where criminals get away with crime. We just can't let them commit the little crimes. We can't let them just walk into a Walgreens and walk out scot-free. We can't do it. We got to stop that. Every single incursion matters. Every single one of them. We have to stay vigilant. We, regular, dumb fucks like me, not even that good. I'm not that good of a person. I don't think I'm an evil person, but I'm not that great of a person, you know? But even normal schlubs, and we have to do our part to make sure that these things get turned around. And there's a lot of turning around to be done, but it's manageable. We can do it, you know? There's still abundance. The plants are still growing. There's too many calories, so our problems aren't that bad. People aren't starving to death, you know? Our poorest people are overweight, okay? In the whole scheme of things, we're doing too well. So we shouldn't lose hope. But if I'm looking for a spin. I really am. I'm looking for an out. I'm looking for a defense of these people that can make me feel a little bit more comfortable about who we're dealing with. I don't want to think of them as enemies. I don't. I want to think of them as fellow Americans, but it's really hard. It's really hard when they're gleefully celebrating the murder of a person with my values or something close to my values. Not all, but very close. I don't know. That's enough for now. Thanks for listening. Unnecessary outro song to totally waste more time.